Joe Burson. The night of June 16th, 2021, Holly Springs, Georgia. 25-year-old Officer Joe Burson, just a year on the force, pulls over a car for speeding. It's a routine traffic stop, the kind of thing that happens 1,000 times a night all over the country. But this one is about to turn into a nightmare. The driver, a man named Ansi Dolce, decides he's not going to comply.
Nope.
He hits the gas. As the car lurches forward, Officer Burson becomes entangled. He is dragged along by the speeding vehicle. What happens next is a sequence of pure, visceral horror, all captured on his own body cam and dash cam. Joe is being dragged to his death. He's clinging on for dear life as the car picks up speed, his body being slammed against the asphalt. In these final, terrifying moments, with unimaginable pain and adrenaline coursing through him, he does something absolutely heroic. He doesn't give up. While being dragged, he manages to unholster his weapon. He fires at the driver, Ansi Dolce, in a desperate attempt to stop the car, to save his own life. He succeeds in shooting the driver, but it's too late. Both men would die from the incident. Ansi Dolce from the gunshot wounds, and Joe from the horrific trauma he sustained while being dragged down the road. He was a hero until the very end, fighting for his life and trying to stop the threat even as he was being killed. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the case. The police chief of Holly Springs called Burson a model officer and said, "If you want to be a police officer, you should clone Joe Burson." Curtis Worland. Police officers are trained to deal with human threats. They prepare for violence, for confrontations, for the worst that society can throw at them. But what about a threat that's prehistoric? A threat that has been roaming the frozen tundra since the last ice age. Meet Curtis Worland, a court services officer with the Alaska State Troopers. With 13 years of service, he was a seasoned veteran of law enforcement in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. On December 13th, 2022, in the remote town of Nome, Alaska, Officer Worland faced his final call-out. But it wasn't a person he was responding to. It was a group of musk oxen. A herd of these massive, shaggy beasts had wandered near his home, and he went outside to try and haze them away from his dog kennel. Now, a musk ox is not a creature to be trifled with. We're talking about an 800-pound animal with sharp, curved horns and a temper to match. They look slow and dopey, but they can be incredibly aggressive. Worland, a man trained to de-escalate conflicts with people, found himself in a primal man versus beast confrontation. One of the musk oxen charged him. He was trampled and gored. The sheer weight and power of the animal was overwhelming. It was the first recorded fatal musk ox attack in the history of Nome. The death of Officer Worland sent shockwaves through the small, tight-knit community. It's a death so bizarre, it's almost hard to process. He didn't die in a shootout or a car chase. He died on his own property, defending his dogs from a wild animal that seems like a relic from another time. Ryan Allen. Let's go to Hatboro, Pennsylvania. Ryan Allen was the kind of cop you see in movies. At 35, he was a decorated canine officer, the founder of his department's canine unit, a father of 2 young sons. He was strong, brave, and trained to handle some of the most dangerous situations in policing. In October of 2021, Ryan's life was on an upward swing. He had just gotten married. 2 days after the wedding, he was at home when he was stung by a bee. A bee. For most people, it's a painful nuisance. For Ryan Allen, it was a death sentence. He had no idea he was allergic. He suffered a massive anaphylactic shock. His body's reaction was swift and violent. He went into cardiac arrest, and his heart stopped beating for nearly 20 minutes. Paramedics were able to restart his heart, but the damage was done. The prolonged lack of oxygen to his brain caused a severe, irreversible brain injury. Ryan Allen, the tough canine cop, was now in a vegetative state. For 5 long months, he lay in a hospital bed, unresponsive. During this agonizing time, his wife, who he had just married, gave birth to their second son. A new life coming into the world as his father's was slipping away. His family held on to hope, but the man they knew was already gone. In April of 2022, after 5 months in a coma, Ryan Allen died. His community gave him a hero's farewell with a massive police procession called The Last Ride. His wife, now a widow and a coach for other grieving spouses, was left to raise their 2 sons alone. Liam Trimmer. Let's continue with a story in Perth, Australia, on a day that should have been the happiest of a young man's life. It was March 9th, 2024. Liam Trimmer, a 29-year-old senior constable with the Western Australia Police, was celebrating. And he had a lot to celebrate. Originally from the UK, Liam had moved to Australia and built a life for himself. He was a respected officer, part of the elite tactical response group, a real poster boy for the force. On this day, he and his partner, a nurse named Lily Watts, had gathered their friends and family for their engagement party. But there was more. They were also about to announce to the world that they were expecting their first child. It was a picture-perfect moment. A double celebration of love and new life, surrounded by the people who mattered most. In the midst of the joy and laughter, something went horribly, freakishly wrong. Liam slipped and fell. It could have been nothing, a clumsy moment, a spilled drink, a story to laugh about later. But it wasn't. In a 1 in a million accident, as he fell, he cut his neck on a sharp object. The wound was catastrophic. It severed his carotid artery. Chaos erupted. His partner, Lily, a trained nurse, rushed to his side. Other officers and guests, trained in first aid, desperately tried to save him. They applied pressure. They did everything they could to stop the bleeding. But the injury was too severe. The man who had faced down armed criminals and tactical situations was bleeding to death in his own home, at his own engagement party, just moments after announcing he was going to be a father. Liam died right there, on the floor, surrounded by his loved ones. He died not in the line of duty, but in a moment of pure, cruel, random chance. A GoFundMe for his pregnant fiancée raised over $60,000. The police commissioner called him a shining example of a police officer. Rest in peace. Houston tipping. Sometimes the most painful death is one shrouded in suspicion, where the official story just doesn't add up. This is the story of Houston Tipping, a 32-year-old LAPD officer. The official report says he died in a tragic accident. His family says he was murdered by his own colleagues. In May of 2022, Officer Tipping was participating in a realistic training exercise at the LAPD's Elysian Park Academy. The scenario was meant to simulate grappling with a suspect. During this exercise, Tipping suffered a catastrophic spinal cord injury. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. He died from his injuries. The LAPD called it a tragic accident, but Tipping's family and their lawyer paint a much, much darker picture. They claim this was no accident. It was an act of retaliation. According to their lawsuit, Houston Tipping was a whistleblower. He had recently filed a report accusing 4 of his fellow officers of being involved in a gang rape. The family alleges that those same officers, or their allies, orchestrated the training accident to silence him. The family's lawyer claims that Tipping was repeatedly struck in the head during the exercise and that his neck was broken. The autopsy report confirmed a broken neck and multiple broken ribs, injuries that seem extreme for a controlled training scenario. The family believes he was beaten to death by his colleagues in a brutal act of revenge disguised as a training mishap. The LAPD, of course, denies this. They conducted an internal investigation and, surprise, surprise, found no evidence of misconduct. They maintain that Houston Tipping's death was a terrible but accidental consequence of a realistic training exercise. So what's the truth? Was it a freak accident in a dangerous training environment? Or was it a cold-blooded murder, a conspiracy to silence a whistleblower, carried out by the very people who were supposed to have his back? We may never know for sure, but for Houston Tipping, the pain of his death is compounded by the poison of suspicion. Krystal Rivera. The line between partner and suspect can sometimes get blurry. In the chaotic world of policing, trust is everything. But what happens when that trust is broken in the most violent way imaginable? Let's go to Chicago, June 5th, 2025. 36-year-old Officer Krystal Rivera, a 4-year veteran and a mother to a young daughter, was responding to a call involving an armed suspect. During a foot chase, the situation got messy. The official story is that Krystal was tragically killed by friendly fire. Her partner, Officer Carlos Baker, fired his weapon at the suspect, but the bullet struck and killed Krystal instead. A terrible accident in a high-stress situation. But Krystal's family says that's a lie. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and their claims paint a picture that is much, much darker. According to the family, Krystal and her partner, Officer Baker, weren't just colleagues. They were romantically involved. But the relationship had soured. Krystal had recently ended the affair after discovering Baker was unfaithful, and she had allegedly threatened to expose the relationship to his live-in girlfriend. Suddenly, the friendly fire incident looks different. The family's lawsuit claims that Baker intentionally shot Krystal in the back during the chase, using the chaos of the moment as cover for murder. They believe he killed her to silence her. And the tragedy doesn't even end there. As if the story wasn't painful enough, the police car that was rushing Krystal to the hospital crashed and burst into flames. A final, horrific indignity in a story already filled with suspicion and heartbreak. Was it a one-in-a-million accident? A tragic case of friendly fire in the heat of the moment? Or was it a cold, calculated murder committed by a fellow officer she once trusted with her life? The case is still under investigation, but the pain for Krystal Rivera's family is magnified by the horrifying possibility that she was killed not by a criminal, but by the man standing right next to her. Fred Fislar. Finally, a story of tragic, classic irony. It was April 16th, 2024, in Plainfield, Indiana. Deputy Fred Fislar, a husband and father to 2 young children, was on duty. He responded to a call about a single vehicle accident. A car had lost control and slammed into an electricity pole. When Fislar arrived, he found a chaotic scene. The pole was shattered, and live high-voltage power lines were down, lying across the wet road. The driver of the crashed car was injured, and the scene was incredibly dangerous. Fred, with just 2.5 years on the force, went to work. His job was to secure the area, to keep people away from the live wires, to help the injured driver, to make sure no one else got hurt. He was the first responder, the man in charge of bringing order to the chaos. In the darkness and confusion, while trying to manage the scene, Deputy Fislar made a fatal mistake. He came into contact with one of the live power lines. He was electrocuted instantly. The man who was there to save lives became a victim himself. He died right there, on the side of the road. It's a story that's heartbreaking in its simplicity. There was no malice, no criminal intent, just a simple, fatal misstep in a hazardous environment. The driver of the original accident was taken to the hospital.